Okay. I think we're ready to get started in just a second. Pete, how you doing, man?
What's up, my dude? How you doing?
Not too bad. We're uh
Noise.
we're multi-streaming in the multiverse of doing
Here we go.
Twitter along with Twitter along with Twitter. Twitter along with YouTube. I just want to make sure that they can hear you.
Dude, we're X streaming right now? Are we X streaming? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. I just want to make sure they can hear you.
Okay. I think let me see. Hold on, let me make sure I turn my volume up just a little tiny bit here.
I don't think they can
Okay.
hear you.
No? Oh,
Let me see.
On Twitter or just in general?
On Twitter. I think they can hear you on YouTube. Let me see if I can do
Huh.
this. Um, Let me. I'm gonna send you something on Discord really quick.
Okay.
Let me see. Damn it! Why can't I just
All
type
right.
in your name message? There you go. I'm gonna send you a message. Secret message.
Secret.
Um, accept
Okay.
that. And let me know. So maybe then I can get rid of this Discord.
Trust. Visit. Melon. Don't have video today, but
That's fine. It's not video.
okay.
It's more just making sure they can hear your audio.
Pete joined.
Pete has joined.
Whoa, you just sounded like Skeletor in my ears all of a sudden. What just happened?
It might just be the
Oh, I'm getting reverb. That's why. Okay, I think we're good.
I think if you just mute the melon tab, I
Mute the.
think you should be fine.
Gotcha. All right.
Let me just make sure that
Okay.
they can.
Make sure they can hear me.
Yeah.
All right.
Is your mic on the bottom? It'll have like a mic symbol. Sorry for people
Mike.
on
No.
YouTube watching this. This is we should I should have set this up earlier, but we're here now. It should be like
No, it's not. Let me go into my settings here real quick and see what's going on. Ah, there we go. Hold on. Progress is being made. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. I think we have liftoff here. Let me. Why is it muted? Is it muted? I don't understand what that even means. It's showing that I have levels, but then it's not showing that I'm actively talking. Let me try this again. Troubleshooting. No, I don't want to do that, man.
so your audio inputs on your um whatchamacallit, your
The mic
microphone.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do I get to that though on here?
It's
Is it
it's
in
on the bottom.
settings?
Do you see the bottom of your screen? There's like a mute, stop video, add cam, share, react. You have that?
I have no. I literally have 5 tabs. No audio, no video, remove cam, share, leave. That's all I have.
For the audio,
If I click the no audio, it only gives me a few options. It gives echo cancellation, stereo, audio, auto
and it
adjust mic volume.
does it have like audio input at all?
No, no.
Ugh. No.
I wonder if it's a setting you have to change.
Maybe let me see.
It's you're hosting the stream.
I can mute
Yep.
you.
There. I think that's it. I'm unmuted now.
Okay, let's see if it can hear you on.
It still shows that I have no audio. That doesn't make any sense. Damn Twitter, dude.
See what we're looking
I
like.
want to leave.
Yeah,
Unplug my mic's.
Dexter, we're gonna be starting in a second. Oh, maybe that's. Oh, what about now?
Hello, hello. It didn't change anything on my end. I don't know about on the stream itself though.
Dexter, we're gonna be starting in a second.
Doesn't sound like it. I'm not hearing myself in the echo. Why? Test mic. Because when I click test mic, it literally shows that I have
You have
levels.
levels. You have the
Yeah,
V2 levels.
got these levels. Let's go. Okay. It's doing something. I don't know if it's changing anything.
Damn. Okay.
Dude, I have no input options.
I don't know why.
Oh. Audio speaker. Wait, hold on. Might be doing something here. All right, hold on. I think I got it.
I
Hello?
got it.
Can you hear me now? Let's do a test and tell me if you can hear me because I think I fixed it. I think. Turn off echo cancellation. Test that again. Yeah, it shows I have levels now and it shows I'm not muted. So I don't know if there's anything else I could even change that would fix this, but I think it should be set.
Hmm.
You getting anything or still no?
No, I'm not hearing you.
Hmm. Why is it doing that? 'Cause now I can actually access the audio input, but it still isn't necessarily showing that I have audio. Why is it doing that?
It's dumb because Melon's like a whatchamacallit. It's a um. Oh, you know what else? That's also what I need to do. Give me 1 second, everybody. We need to make sure we're on Ethernet and not Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
Because I don't want us to be screwed.
Hmm. Default.
Hmm.
There's literally like 3 different blue snowball settings for this stupid thing. None of them work.
Damn.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix that.
Well, let us do. Oops. That's funny. You can have this little forward overlays. Well, let's just go. Let's just stay on YouTube, and then we can work on the stream thing a little bit later. When we have more time. So I'm gonna end the stream on Twitter. I do apologize, everybody. But looking forward to hopefully maybe putting out some videos actually on there. So just be on the lookout for that a little bit later down the line. Gonna experiment a little bit more with it, but we're gonna get started on YouTube. So just be aware for that. Everyone else on Twitter, tune in on YouTube to get this coverage of this show. Anyway, guys, we'll see you later. All right. So for my people on the YouTube side, we do apologize for that. Just again trying to find different ways to stream in different areas besides YouTube. Just for more reaching out, and we want to make sure that there's more accessibility in other platforms. So that's why we decided to go there. But nevertheless, we are here to discuss a lot of different things here. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying your Tuesday afternoon, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. We do appreciate you guys for tuning in. And again, today we're going to talk mostly about, of course, the Jaylen Brown contract extension. We're going to talk about the NBA kind of off season. We're going to do a little tier list thing and really talk about who is going to be ready to go for a championship, who's not, and really get going from that stuff. But before we do, Pete, how's it going? Nope. Make sure we're in the. Let's see here, Pete, you there? Oh, I think we lost Pete for a second. But nevertheless, we will get started here on the YouTubes. If you just give me 1 second to set some stuff up.
Hello?
All right, I think we're back. Pete's back.
You hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Dude, I don't know what is going on. I didn't change anything. All right, let's get it, my guy. I'm
Yeah,
doing good. For asking. Let's talk some basketball, my guy.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And like you said, I know you've been clamoring for some talking a little bit NBA news, especially off-season stuff. I know that everything hasn't quite settled just yet, but we're getting close to that August uh, time. We're getting close to that NBA regular season in October, which is crazy to think that it's coming so soon. Desku, hopefully you still are on with us watching on YouTube. And whoever you may be listening, make sure you guys are watching it as we go live here to proceed to give you what you need. Like I said, we're going to talk Jaylen Brown. We're going to talk NBA offseason. So let's get started right away with the first story of the day. And we're going to go with Jaylen Brown here. Jaylen Brown, of course, if you guys didn't know earlier. Actually, before we talk about Jaylen Brown, kind of want to send a quick prayers to Bronny James and the LeBron James family. I know that he had a sudden cardiac arrest yesterday. So I hope that he and his family are doing well. It's a scary sight to see such a young athlete get a very serious medical emergency like that. So again, prayers up to Bronny James and the rest of the James family.
Yeah, 100%. Glad it got caught. Glad he's all right from everything we've heard so far.
Exactly. But kind of changing subjects here, we are now going to go to the Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics have finally agreed to what is the biggest deal ever in NBA history, and that's, of course, signing a 5-year, $304 million extension supermax. Of course, know that Brown's contract is fully guaranteed and has a trade kicker. Brown, however, does not have a player option as part of the deal. Brown qualified for the Supermax after making an All NBA team this past season and is ineligible to be traded until the 2024 offseason after the extension. Pete, this is a really big contract. I think it's going to, obviously, we talked about this a lot. I think the Mike Conley contract is a contract that comes to mind. What do you make of this contract? Is it a good signing? Is it bad? Like, what do you make of Jaylen Brown signing this? And where do you see it going from here on out?
I gotta say, this is one of the more conflicting supermax contracts in recent memory, as far as I'm concerned, for me. And I say that for a couple reasons. I think one, like obviously, this is where a lot of people I've seen just don't really get the business side of the league, right? Like the Celtics had to do this. They had to. There was no option for them. You
Mm-hmm.
can't go into this offseason and regardless of how Jaylen Brown played in the playoffs, regardless if he has a left hand, regardless whatever you want to say about his game, right? He is in a category of player that instantly is going to get the Supermax extension. That's just the way the league works. And the Celtics are in a position where you can't let these types of guys walk for nothing, right? The hard part is you have to and I don't know if you're going to push back on this, Bernie. I think it's a fair question to say whether or not Jaylen Brown is a top 20 player. He's right there, right? Regardless if he's over that cusp or not. He's right there. But it still has to sting to be paying a guy that's certainly not in the top 12 players in the league more money than all the other guys. That's really tough to swallow. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think they had to do it, but he's not the type of guy I would have wanted to break the record if I'm the one paying these contracts out. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? How do you feel as a Celtics fan? I would assume your feelings are very strong on this one way or the other at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, I think the clear thing is, of course, the contract had to be signed. I think the way that the league works now, unfortunately, I think that this is I would say, frustrating part about the league is that really, I think these supermaxes have become not in terms of them getting their money. Like, I'll never hate on anybody getting their money, but in terms of salary cap implications and things like that, it really ties up an organization. And really, I'm thinking more for the small markets. I mean, Boston will be fine, but I'm thinking more for the small markets. Like, they have their hands tied and can't, sign a lot of the guys that they want to, sign some pieces here and there. Like, it's crazy to me that teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and even the Denver Nuggets even won a championship because of the fact that for the most part, like when you pay someone the super max, like that is basically kind of being handcuffed in a way, right? Because most of
Hmm.
your salary cap percentage goes to that star player. Um, and so, I think for me, like this had to get done. I'm excited for Jaylen Brown to get this super max deal. Because again, it's similar to what happened with Mike Conley, right? Mike Conley signed the super max many years ago and was the highest paid player at one point in this league. I
Hmm.
do think that Brown is a top 15 player in the NBA. Now, is he closer towards the end of the 15? That's probably for debate, and I'd probably say that that's kind of where I rank him at. But to get to the nitty gritty of this whole thing, I think, like you said, it's a very conflicting thing because on one end, I'm very happy that Jaylen Brown has decided to stay. But the other chance, it's kind of one of those things where I just don't want to continue to see the same style of basketball being played these
Hmm.
last couple years continue on for more years longer. Like these two guys, just as um, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, like these players have to understand that there's no longer your turn, my turn type of thing. We can't get into that sort of argument. We can't get into that style of play, and I hope Joe Mazzulla is in the offseason cooking right now. Especially making sure that those guys are working on their game and working on if they're gonna drive, make sure that they don't drive on clogged lanes because
Yep.
we saw that in the Golden State series a couple years back, and now we even saw it in the Miami Heat series. Like they clogged the lanes, they got both of those players to their left, from a behind the back or
Hmm.
whatever move it is, and they were able just to poke it out and go the other way with it for an easy fast break. And so, that's kind of my sort of pessimist side about things. But in terms of what Jaylen Brown brings. I think he does bring that superstar ability and quality to the Celtics. I think with Porzingis, I would love to see how it works out with those guys. Maybe it does help out in some sense.
Hmm.
But like you said, at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where you have to look at it and say, is he worth the supermax as being the top paid player in the whole league? Probably not. But I think it's just the reality of when they sign these contracts.
Yeah.
If there's a new TV deal coming in, there's going to be another player next year that's going to make even more money. And so
True.
that's kind of I think that's kind of the reality of this super max contract. And what I would like to see happen, really, Pete, is that I would love to see that these super maxes don't, and maybe this is just me being like anti what the new CBA deal is going through, but I just don't want to see uh, really what I don't want to see is that these teams, I'm really thinking more so for the Oklahoma City Thunders, who have to probably in a couple years down the line have to have the similar discussion about Chet Holmgren, about Josh Giddey, and all these other guys that are coming through their youth program.
Yep.
They're gonna have to make decisions like this, and so I hate that it has to like hamstring or shoe tie any of these players that are trying to have a super team or create an organic super team in a way where you have drafted these guys, and it really is going to hamstring these organizations. So that's kind of my whole synopsis on it. I know it kind of went in many different directions, but that's kind of what my initial thinking was when I saw this contract being signed.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, this is really one of the most conflicting ones ever. Like I said, like there's a lot of stuff going on that is kind of irrelevant to Jaylen Brown, particularly, right? Like the way that the CBA was renegotiated, the way that supermaxes are in the league right now. It all was leading towards somebody getting this contract. Whether or not it was Jaylen Brown was kind of, definitely up for debate. He just happened to be in the perfect place at the right time contractually, right? To be in this type of leverage situation. I can't lie to you, Bernie. I'm always pretty conflicted about like one or two guys making like 80% of the team's money. Like I'm always going to be conflicted about that. And
Mm-hmm.
that maybe that's just a personal thing in terms of um I just find it really hard to believe in a professional setting when you're at that level it's always going to be as simple as, he deserves that. I'll just be okay making 1%. I just don't think that there's always going to be animosity, and whether or not that's a big deal or not is definitely up for debate. Jaylen Brown deserves to be one of the higher played players in the NBA. That's not even a question. It's the fact that I, I, I don't know about you, Bernie. You're probably going to disagree with this, but I would classify Jaylen in not in the totality of his game, but I do think in a lot of ways he's a sloppy basketball player. Okay. I think he makes a lot of dumb choices. And I think he kind of, obviously leans into his athleticism in the sense that he thinks he can get away with things that he can't really get away with. And you pointed it out in terms of the way he dribbles, obviously is not necessarily the greatest,
Mm-hmm.
but in particular, he leaves himself exposed to get the ball poked away from him very often, regardless of what hand he's dribbling with. It happens, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a strange thing to think about. You're a sloppy player who has a huge hole in your game that everybody knows about, yet you're still the highest paid guy in the league. There's going to be all sorts of people who feel a certain type of way about that. So I'm interested really to see the response from other players around the league. I think obviously the guys at the top are going to be like, you're setting us all up for success in the long run. But there is a question of like, is this dude even happy in Boston? you know,
Yeah. I mean,
is he going to be happy there after the 2024 during the 2024 offseason when that extension, is he's able to be traded? I, I'm not sure, man. I think that this is going to be a huge tell. Like,
yeah.
if we keep having these guys get these exorbitant deals where it is literally crippling to the rest of your franchise,
Mm-hmm.
and the trend is that after a year or two, if it's not going perfect, they're going to take that huge contract and try and walk with it. It's a tough pill to swallow for these guys paying the contracts out, and I will never be on their side of things, but you do have to wonder like what the response is. There's got to be a lot of teams looking at this saying like, let's see what happens with Jaylen Brown. Do we want to give out $70 million a year, type contracts? I don't think there's a lot of teams that could, let alone want to. But it'll be interesting, man. I don't know, Bernie. I don't know about this one. I don't know about it.
Yeah. I mean, I just think at
I
the
I
end.
hope it works out for everybody. I do.
Yeah. I mean, I just think at the end of the day, what it all boils down to really is, I really do think that this all just boils down to what the offense surrounds Jaylen Brown. And really, I think for the most part, what the Celtics will have to do is to limit, not necessarily limit his dribbles, but more so limit the opportunities for him to have to make any more like counter moves than he needs to, right? I think it goes really, I think the play style more so than anything else. And I know my chair is sinking, and I feel like I'm sinking to like 4'6" here on the channel. And I'm already short as it is, but I just think for the most part, the biggest thing is going to be these guys, both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And you know how I feel about Jason Tatum working with Drew Hanlon. I don't want to get into a conversation about that, but the big thing for me is really how do we limit and don't allow these players, and that means so more so for Joe Mazzulla, like how do we get them to understand, okay, if one move or two moves don't work, you got to move it and let's play team basketball. Like I just feel like all these dribble moves and everything that both Tatum and Brown and now even Paulo, I think, is training with Jason Tatum and Drew Hanlon. So I'm praying for Paulo there. Um,
Yeah.
like how are those moves going to help you win and play team basketball? Like, yes, you can get yours in December against the Denver Nuggets, when Jokic is out, or, the trying to think of really bad teams like the Houston Rockets, the Detroit Pistons. Like, yeah, you can get yours against those guys. Like, I understand, like, that's where you can get like most of your buckets from all those moves.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do in the playoffs, right? The Orlando Magic, I have high expectations for them to, and maybe this is early predictions, but I have high expectations of them to get at least close to the playing game. How is your game? And I know that this is going on Paulo, but like maybe more so for the Celtics. Like, how is your game going to elevate when you play against these teams? Like, there was no way the Celtics should have struggled or even lost game one against the 76ers last year. I think that there was a couple games for the Celtics. I mean, they shouldn't have lost the Miami Heat series. Like, they should have won that series and
No,
gone to the
yeah.
NBA Finals. So I think, like, by looking at that and seeing everything, the Celtics need to do a much better job. That being Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and whoever is training with these guys that are doing these dribble moves when it feels like it's 1v5 and not 5v5. I just think the less dribbles, the less of these moves, the better for some of these guys because they clearly, um, they're good in, like I said, December, January games. But when it comes to finally getting into that NBA postseason, how are you going to play? And that's my concern with this whole thing.
Well, and let me ask you a question though, Bernie. I guess, and I'm somewhat playing devil's advocate, but I, to an extent, have to ask this question legitimately too. You know, should you really be the highest paid player if the fans of your team and the team itself has to worry about that type of stuff? Like, genuinely, I get that the business deems, like, I am fully aware. The way that the NBA's business is set up currently in its current capacity, he had to get that contract or he was going to walk and get something similar to it somewhere else. It's just the way it is right now, right? But don't you think that there's a problem with that? Like, I'm sorry. I just don't think that, like, even if you compare him to his contemporaries, Bernie, like, let's say, I mean, you're not worrying about stuff like that with Jokic or Giannis or any, like, really, you're not. It's just, I find it very interesting that we're in a day and age where you have guys that genuinely have questions about their performance in these big moments, but just because they're eligible for it, we all deem that it's just mandatory. It's just mandatory that he becomes the highest paid because it's the time, place, and he deserves a supermax. But the question is, like, how many people could you put in the same exact situation as Jaylen Brown? And I know that he's really, really great. I'm not trying to really take too much away from him, right? But he does get a ton of leeway on the team he's in. He was a high draft pick who had a lot invested in him, right? How many people could be in that position with all the opportunity he's had and maximize their effort and not be that far off of where he is, Bernie? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just find it interesting that we have guys like Caleb Martin, for example, who he was working Jaylen Brown in some of those games in the Heat series. And that dude is, way closer to a league minimum than Jaylen Brown's contract. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just, you have to question, man, like, is there longevity in these type of deals? Are these organizations that are selling themselves out for these types of contracts, are they really like hamstringing themselves 5 years from now? Because
Uh,
really, what happens if they never win a championship with this team and he's the highest paid player of all time, and then they have to do the same thing for Tatum in whenever 3 years or 2 years, whatever it is.
yeah. I mean, I do agree in a sense because, I talked about it actually yesterday. For the
Mm-hmm.
people that didn't know, we talked about ESPN and the new revenue thing that they're going to go with by giving, stakeholder shares or, a minority ownership of ESPN to NBA, NFL, MLB. Like, they're looking into that because I think you're right, Pete. Like, this is going to be a very troubling time because to me, this offseason is starting to eerily feel like I think it was 2016, if I'm not mistaken. The
Yeah, 2016,
2016,
17.
16, 17 NBA offseason where you had like guys like Mozgov, you had guys like Otto
Alan
Porter
Crabbe.
Jr. getting these huge contracts, which, for being a specialist in your role is great, for those guys. But like you said, it does hamstring a lot of the organizations out there. Um, you know, the one to me is like the Lakers. It hamstrung them until they were finally able to make this trade and get LeBron James on their team.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that eventually it will, and I'm curious to see like if the TV deals are now going to stagnate a little bit because now they're going to offer ownership. Does that mean that the contracts of the superstar players goes down? That's going to be a big question mark that, I just kind of thought about it as you were talking. It's kind of one of the concerns
Mm-hmm.
or one of the things that I'm curious to see what happens. But, I do think at some point the money does have to plateau. I know inflation accounts for everything, and I know this is not an economics channel, but eventually, like, there's going to be a cap to where they're going to pay these players. I don't necessarily think it's going to continue to go up forever and ever because, you know, it'll be interesting to see like what happens in the future with the way that gaming is going to work. Not like video games, but more so like, AI and virtual reality and what's going to happen with the stadium. Like that's a question that I'm curious to see what
Sure.
happens. And I know
Yeah.
that that's a conversation for a different day. Um,
And and what you're saying, I think, is super valid, Bernie. Because really, think about it like this, right? They're gonna. How do you pay these mega contracts, right? What even is it that's actually being like quantified that qualifies these guys to make this crazy amount of money? The answer is pretty simple. It's revenue. It's revenue not only from deals that the league and the teams have with companies, but
mhm.
even more so the people who buy the tickets and go to
Yeah.
the games. And really, that's the thing that I think is like the least talked about. And I hate to always get on my old guy sounding like a socialist type thing. I'm not, okay? But I do think that there has to be a sense of accountability with these types of contracts, right? Because realistically, we all celebrate Jaylen Brown like a lot of people celebrate, these guys getting the bag. All credit to him, man. But really, what's the difference between $225 million and 300 if you really, stop and think about it, right? If your percentage
Mhm.
is close to, closer to being fair with the other guys on your team, not just the other guys on your team, but the other people in the league and your contemporaries and your peers, there has to be a question of, am I really worth 10 times more than Caleb Martin as a basketball player? And I hate to keep harping on it, but it has to be discussed because there is no way, based on purely performance, that Caleb Martin will ever make his way to a contract like Jaylen Brown just did. And that is not fair. That's
Mhm.
not fair, Bernie. Like, I hate to be the fair police. That's crazy because then you have guys like Caleb Martin who's busting his butt every day to get better as a
Mhm.
basketball player. He's defending at the highest level. He's performing in the biggest moments with both hands. Okay. And I'm not just trying to throw shade at Jaylen because there's a ton of people who qualify in what I'm talking about. Damian Lillard is another great example, making $65 million in his final couple of years, doesn't play defense. I find that really hard to swallow when you have other guys doing everything, making way less because they're way less notable of names. But then
Mhm.
also the fact that these teams are going to have to raise prices for everything and make it harder on fans to pay these contracts. That's crazy to me. But they'll never say that out loud, but that is what it is, you know. It
Yeah.
he deserves it based on the way the league is. I'm not even disagreeing with it. I just think I'm very interested to see um like
Mhm.
we're really getting into like a 1% of the league type situation, like there's one percenters now in just that system of
Yeah.
economy, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty strange, man. There's going to be animosity from a lot of people going towards those types of guys,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
if Jaylen Brown doesn't get better.
Yeah. And I think this is gonna lead to probably a lot of different conversations, different routes, talking about all this. But it is gonna be interesting to find out in the future where the league heads. And like I talked about in yesterday's video, especially when it comes to ESPN and their decline and stuff like that. Um, I think eventually that these players are turning into content creators, right? Where they're selling their their content creator likeness to the leagues so that they can make the money that they do. And so I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the future. I think it's going to be very fascinating what goes on as soon as especially as these contracts continue to increase. I'm sure we're going to eventually get to the 5-year, $500 million contract in the next couple of years. I would say the next 2 to 3, actually maybe 5 to 7 might be the
Who is it?
timeline.
Who's your bet? Who's the first one?
I think it's got to be someone either in this. It's got to be someone in this year's class. I think. I think Victor could potentially get it.
You don't think
Um,
Luca might be the guy?
I just don't know if Luca's. I don't think if
The
Luca's
timeline?
timeline works to get to
Yeah.
that contract. I think these young guys, the rookies, are gonna probably get there. Even Paulo might get there, but maybe Paulo might be a year too late.
You might be
But
right. Here, let's talk one last thing before we get off this topic because I think this is interesting. Let's get away from the what we've been how we've been talking about it, whether it's right or wrong, whatever, any of that type of stuff. Let's get away from that. Let's just talk about it is the way it is going forward. How do you make something like this manageable? And I've heard this type of idea floated around before, but I think they're really painting themselves into a corner with this situation. And the MLS has a very similar policy like what I'm about to discuss. That we're seeing it with Messi right now with the Miami team. I don't even know what they're called. Miami FC, is that what they're called?
Inter
Uh,
Miami FC, yeah,
yeah, they have contracts. They have I think it's 3 contracts per team in the MLS that don't go against the salary cap, right?
yeah,
They're gonna have to do something like that. I don't think it's gonna be
yeah,
3 players. That would be pretty extreme. But like at least you get one. Maybe you get one supermax that counts for 15% towards the
mm-hmm,
salary cap of what it
yeah.
should. Like what do you think is their best methodology going forward? Like what do you think is the best solution in terms of if we're not going to change how much these guys are making and make it more reasonable, which
Yeah.
does that seems like it's going to be the case. We're just going to keep going forward. How do you think they should fix it
Yeah, I think
or
that they're
make it
probably gonna do.
manageable?
Yeah, I was gonna say they're probably gonna do something similar to what the MLS is gonna do. I talked a little bit about it. I just you have to at some point because, like I talked about, the Oklahoma City Thunder are gonna be in that same predicament in the next couple of years. These teams that have these young players that have been drafting for many years are gonna be in the similar situation where they're gonna have to decide. The Orlando Magic will probably be there as well, along with the Thunder. Who do you
Mm-hmm.
keep and who do you get rid of? And I know that these teams do not want to get rid of talent, especially the small market teams, where it's already hard enough to draft those guys and to even keep them, other than
Yep.
offering them the max money that you can. You have to offer a deal where you can say, hey, like you said, 15%, 20% of it uh, goes against the salary cap. The rest of it will just eat. Um, I think you're gonna have to do something like that, and I think it's probably you're gonna have to limit it to one. But if you do limit it to one, I think it does have to be by the team that drafts you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't
Which
want
I
to,
think that would be an added bonus,
yeah,
realistically. That
because
would
now
incentivize small market teams.
exactly it would incentivize it. Like think about if instead of Jaylen Brown, you put uh, let's do someone on the Thunder here. Let's do you know say Gildish Alexander, right? Shea. You obviously want him on that team, and now you have to decide the rest of it, man. It's kind of one of those things I want to continue to monitor, because I do think that that's probably where the league is going to head towards in the future. um but I even will see that because the CBA, they are, I know CJ McCollum was part of that. I think he's the vice president, I think, or he's the
I think he's the
president.
president. Yeah.
He is very anti super teams, and so I'm curious to see if they'll even agree to that.
He might be anti super team, but based on whatever negotiations they did in that CBA, I'm sorry he didn't do a good job of showing it. I'll just tell you that much because really this is it killed the middle class of players contracts, and then they just made it even more like these teams are even more reliant upon these supermax guys. Like really, that's that's all it is. Um, I think you're onto something. I think it would be really interesting. What if it's like is the OKC is a great example because going under what we're talking about, they didn't draft SGA, so they would be
Yeah,
in a funny situation where let's say he came up for an extension, but they also are thinking about giving the supermax to Chet, right?
yeah,
Like there would be maybe like one that's classified different, like one that pertains specifically to a person you drafted, right? And that let's say if you drafted a guy and he's been on your team since made the pick,
mm-hmm,
it's 0% against the cap. And then let's say he's somebody traded for or signed in free agency, that would count as like 15%, right? Because then
mm-hmm.
it truly would incentivize giving super maxes from small markets even more, right? Because then
Yeah,
it's even less against it's going to be really fascinating. I'm interested to see,
yeah,
regardless.
yeah, because I just feel like super maxes right now are kind of the the nail in the coffin for a lot of these small market teams because, like, yeah, we can pay you a ton of money, but we're gonna have nothing left for you.
Yeah, is it worth it? Like, is it even worth it in 5 years to say we signed Jaylen Brown to, Because I think one of the things that's really interesting, Bernie, let's say Jaylen Brown, we're 3 years into this contract and he still has no left hand and, gets the ball stripped from him all the time, right? That contract is an albatross. That's impossible to move. Nobody's taking a $70 million a year guy with a trade kicker who can't dribble on his left, right? Like, that's
mm-hmm.
insanity. So really, I think the long-term planning in terms of how you determine who's worth, maybe truly that's going to be what's going to slow this down. There's going to have to be maybe 3 or 4, instances where it goes horrifically wrong and these teams are just stuck with a guy that's immovable. Because really, the one I thought is the worst that we've seen in recent memory, Bernie, is Bradley Beal. That one's terrible. I
Yeah.
mean, they had to give the dude away to get that contract out of there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but even then, they still managed to move it. So, is
Yeah.
anything immovable? I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's going to be the interesting question to monitor as we continue to look at these big contracts. So let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of these big contracts? Are you a big fan of them? Are you not a big fan of them? Let us know in the comment section down below how you feel about Jaylen Brown Supermax. And do you think that this is more of a negative or a positive for small market teams that they have to pay a Supermax? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right. Let us check out and see what we else can talk about. We also, of course, have the NBA tier list, but let me make sure that there's no breaking news coming in here.
we're clear.
I think we're good to go in terms of all that. So we are going to officially move into the next segment of course, the NBA offseason. And we're going to rank each and every team to see what moves they made in this offseason. We'll also include NBA drafts picks as well. Because I know that they didn't really include it in the NBA free agency offseason moves here on NBA.com, but it has everything that we can see. With that being said, Pete, let us talk about. Let me open this in a new tab so we can look at the NBA draft. Let me make sure that we have. Give me the whole list. It only gives me the 14. 1 second. Let me make sure that we have the whole list. Oh, here we go. Perfect. All right. So we're gonna start off with, of course, what the NBA.com has, and of course, it's going in the order of conferences. So we're gonna first start off with the Atlanta Hawks. How would you rank their offseason moves? Just to reiterate to people that probably did not watch, they picked up Patty Mills via trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They got DeJounte Murray. They got Wesley Matthews. And I believe in the draft, they picked up, if I'm not mistaken, they picked up a kid named Kobe Brown or
Oh, Kobe Buffkin.
Buffkin.
Yeah.
Buffkin. There you go.
He had a pretty rough summer league too, but he looks like he's going to be pretty good. He's very athletic, that is for
Yeah.
sure.
So where would you rank? And of course, if you guys don't know, we have a tier list here. We have championship offseason, good offseason, solid, mid, and I think we're just gonna get rid of one. We're just gonna get rid of one because I kind of want it to be a little bit more like who's gonna be in the worst. So we have worst offseason, mid offseason. Let's go. We're gonna get rid of solid, and we're just gonna have 4 options: championship, good, mid, worst. Where are we
This
putting the
one's kind of
Hawks?
tough. I would probably put them in mid as far as I'm concerned. They haven't really necessarily addressed any of their main issues as far as I'm
Mm-hmm.
concerned. Um, I honestly, Bernie, I know there's people who disagree with this. I still think they need a better center. Um, I know Clint Capella he's serviceable, he's fine. But he's very easy to game plan for. He's very predictable. It's not like there's a lot of variance in his game. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
straightforward. This is one of the weird ones though, where it's a mid off season, but I still think they're going to be in a better place than they were last season, purely based on an off season's worth of coaching
Yeah.
from Quinn Snyder.
Hmm.
I do think with Quinn Snyder there, if if Trey is really going to buy in to what Quinn is doing and get him into some of the sets that
Yeah.
Mitchell was running, it's going to be really nice for them. I mean, their offense is going to look way better than last year. So yeah, I'll say mid, but it could be. I still think they're going to be better than they were last year.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I think it's gonna be mid for now, just because I think they obviously had to re-sign Dejounte Murray. That was kind of the big thing after making that big trade that they did
Yep,
a year ago. Wesley Matthews, solid. I would say solid pickup from them. Patty Mills,
that's
again,
fine.
these are solid pickups, but they're just a little bit older. And their draft pick, I like the draft pick that they got. I think he's gonna be really solid in the league. Obviously he struggled this summer league, but I think he's gonna be fine. But they didn't do anything to, like you said, move the needle to move themselves even further to getting into a championship contender. They were kind of one of my teams that I dubbed the Warriors of the East, and they have kind of failed in that aspect of it. But I do think that they can at least salvage what they have there, and kind of do a decent job. So I agree with you, mid off season. And
Yeah,
then
they
let's
need to definitely address center and small forward as far as I'm concerned. But yeah,
all right. Let's move on to the Boston Celtics. Of course, they got Danilo Banton, uh, Oshie Brisket, Jaylen Brown, obviously that extension, uh, Kristaps
just
Porzingis.
just disrespected my Syracuse guy so
Shea
hard right there. It's all right. O'Shea Brissett can eat that. He'll live. He's
Brissett.
happy to be talked about.
And then let's make sure that they didn't. I don't think they drafted anybody. Maybe they did.
Yeah, they did. They got Jordan Walsh,
Jordan Walsh. There you go.
which I actually really like him.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be solid.
All right. Where are we
You want me to
going?
go first, or you want to go
Yeah.
first, Bernie?
I can go first. I think that
Here, it's your team.
this was a I think that this was a championship offseason for them. I think that you add a guy in Kristaps Porzingis who is going to probably most likely help out in that Al Horford role, where he's going to be a stretch big that kind of is more a little bit bigger, and I think that he can absorb the minutes, and you kind of limit what Al Horford does. Um, the big thing that we're probably going to miss is the grittiness of a Marcus Smart. Kind of playing some solid defense, but I just think that this team, with the offseason moves that they made, with the draft picks that they got, I think that there's going to be some guys that could help them in that aspect. And so, I got to go championship offseason for the Celtics.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. Regardless of how we feel about the Jaylen Brown extension, as we've already discussed in
Mm-hmm.
vigorous detail, so to say, um, they had to do it, and they got the guy. They re-signed their guy. He's still on the team. All NBA last season. He's there with Tatum. I I think they really upgraded their team in a pretty big way. Just the mere fact of getting Porzingis, I really think is going to help them. It's going to help the spacing quite a bit. It's going to help
Yeah.
most of their sets in general are just going to be crisper because he's a better offensive player than Robert
Mm-hmm.
Williams is, and he's a better offensive player than Al Horford at this point. So
Yeah.
I really like it. I really like it. I actually think Porzingis is underrated at this point.
Damn, that's
But I
coming from a
also
Knicks fan.
it's true, man. I think he gets a lot of disrespect because he truly, did drop the ball in a big way in terms of that Knicks request to leave and then his Dallas tenure, but
Mm-hmm.
there was just no way for him to thrive in Dallas in that Luka offense. It just wasn't ever going to
Yeah.
work. But he was really good last season. He was easily, in my opinion, the best player on the Wizards. So I agree with you, Bernie. Championship offseason from your Celtics.
All right, and let's move on. And let us know if you guys agree or disagree in the comment section down below. Let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets. Darius Baisley, they re-signed him to a 1-year deal. They got Cam Johnson on a 4-year deal. Dennis Smith Jr. 1-year deal. Lonnie Walker gets that 1-year deal. And if I'm not mistaken, they drafted. Let me make sure if I can find it. Noah Clowney from Alabama, and I think Dariq Whitehead as well. A couple of small forwards there from Duke and Alabama. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of been their offseason so far. Where are we going with the Brooklyn Nets? I know that they've come back from what seemed to be like the biggest mess of all time with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, and even James Harden, and that matter. It's crazy that all
Yeah,
those guys were at one point a Brooklyn Net
like a year ago.
a year ago. So
That's
where do you rank?
insanity.
Where do you rank this offseason for them?
To be honest with you, I think this was a good, like not even just a good. I'll say great, but we'll put him in good just because it's the tier we have there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that this is a team that's clearly pivoted, obviously in a big way from where they were last season, but also I
Yeah.
think they, would tried and true wording here. They really understand their timeline in a big way. I think they get it. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not trying to push forward too fast, but they're also not trying to just sit there idly and waste the talent on their team's time. Like they have solid guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they know they're not really championship contenders. And I think their players know. But I think they all understand that they're in one of the best positions to change that fate and circumstance the easiest of all the other teams. They have astronomical amounts of assets, so if somebody like Giannis or Luka comes available, they're right there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I honestly hate it. As a Knicks fan, I really don't like to see this team positioning themselves well. But I really am worried. If there's any team I'm the most worried in terms of being a Knicks fan that they're going to snipe like our guy that we're going to trade for, it is actually Brooklyn. I think they're in a really good spot to make a big
Yeah.
trade. And I think re-signing Cam Johnson was really nice too. Maybe a little much, but it was solid.
You know what this kind of reminds me of? It kind of
What's that?
reminds me of where they were at a couple years ago before they
Yeah,
signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
I
Kind of
agree.
like a young team that has some good pieces here and there that can be pretty solid in the Eastern Conference. And I just think that that's kind
Hmm.
of where this team is at. Like, I think Mikal Bridges took a huge step in his game. Obviously, is 5 years in the league, is absolutely playing lights out basketball. I do like the pickup of Dennis Smith Jr. I know that he's a guy that hasn't really had the career that I think many people expected to, but I think that he can definitely provide and play in the league. So I'm glad that he's getting an opportunity. Same thing with Lonnie Walker, another guy that's getting an opportunity. Uh, I just think the only thing they need to figure out is what they're doing with Ben Simmons. They're gonna have to figure that out pretty
Yeah.
quick. Just because if he is he a part of the plan, is he not part of the plan? That's kind of their decision that they have to decide. But I did like the pickup. The re-signing of Cam Thompson. Cam Thomas was great. Uh, or I guess it was Cameron Johnson, right? He's just signed that contract deal.
Cam Johnson, yes, yeah, yeah.
Cam Thomas still an improving guard, but I do love the pickups of who they had in the draft. We liked Daron Sharp from last year, I believe.
Sure. Yep.
And then they have, like I said, they just got these two guys that they just
Yeah,
picked up.
Clowney he's solid. I mean, he's raw, but he's the type of guy they need. Get
Yeah,
these young dudes who you don't know if what they're gonna turn into. But one of the things I like about this team, as far as like not being really like they're not really in contention, but I still feel like they have. It seems like a really good culture.
yeah,
Like they have a lot of guys who are like good leaders and still trying to get better and push forward. I like that about this team. They're going to be scrappy, that's for sure. I think they're going to win a lot of games that they probably shouldn't, which will be
hmm
something to see.
yeah. So let us know in the comment section down below. Do you guys agree with our ranking for them? Let's move on to the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets. I think the biggest thing, obviously, is Michael Jordan is no longer the owner.
Yeah,
Miles Bridges signed I believe, I can't remember if he signed a 10-year. I can't remember. Let me look up the contract really quick. Signed a qualifying offer for 7.9 for a 1-year deal. Um, LaMelo Ball agrees to a big contract extension, and they of course drafted Brandon Miller. Uh, Pete, Hornets. I think it was I think it was a mid off season for them. I wouldn't call it the worst off season, uh, but I do think that they're kind of in this mid category because I'm a little worried about their draft pick that they have in Miller. Kind of watching him in summer league. I don't know, man. Like it's something about him that I just don't know if he's going to take that next level to where he's going to be a superstar or someone that we put in that kind of superstar category. I think he's going to be a really good player. But is he going to be a superstar player? I just don't think so. Um, and so that's why I kind of have them in the mid off season. I think getting rid of Michael Jordan was probably a good thing for them in terms of not having the influence of Michael there to select those draft picks, because I just feel like that's kind of been their Achilles heel this whole time since Michael Jordan's tenure. Is trying to sign these guys that really I don't think fit their system, and really I don't think have made a competitive team in a very long time. And so I think I'm going to go with mid off season for the Hornets.
We can keep him there. I think it's one of the worst ones, personally.
Oh, no, we can
Just
move
not
it.
a
You want to move it
fan.
down? All right, let's move it down.
I mean,
Move
I
it down.
don't.
Move it down.
Okay, I mean, my stance on them is very clear. I will never, ever, ever agree with taking Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson. I just think it's crazy. Going for fit over who's the best guy when you're one of the worst teams in the league, literally for 25 straight years, is just it's just asinine, in my opinion. Like, you need every good player you can afford to get. You need everything. You should not be looking like what is even it. Yeah, I don't want to get off on the tangent of ranting about that. It makes no sense. That being said, they still didn't address their coaching. Steve Clifford is not the guy.
Yeah,
Just
I forgot
isn't.
to mention that as well.
It's never ever going to pan out with Steve Clifford as their coach. Whatever the plan is there, I don't get that either. I think they're going to again be the probably one of the three worst teams in the league, and to sign a supermax extension player, or not a rookie max extension, I guess is what LaMelo signed. If you're signing that, getting the number 2 draft pick in a really good year, and getting rid of Michael Jordan, to then still have it even be questionable if it's bad or good, that just tells you all you need to know. It's a terrible offseason.
No. Let us know if you guys agree in the comment section down below. And let's move on to the Chicago Bulls. Javon Carter, they agreed to a 3-year deal. Torrey Craig, 2-year deal. Ayo Dosumo, 3-year deal. Kobe White on a 3-year deal. And I believe the Bulls, let's see where the Bulls are at draft wise. I don't think they even have draft pick because I think they gave it to the Magic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yes, they did.
So, and Lonzo's out for another year. So I think that's also another L. Yeah, they got to go. I think they got to go in the worst off season.
I 100% agree with you.
Didn't address any needs. I think Zach LaVine wants out. I mean, this is just a very, I would say, uneasy NBA offseason for Chicago, where a year ago or even 2 years ago, we were thinking, okay, this is good. A lot of people, not us on the channel here, but a lot of people are saying this is a championship contending team. This team can go for the NBA Finals. People didn't slow their brakes. They rushed right into it as soon as they signed Zach LaVine. Or I guess Zach LaVine was still playing, but they signed Vucevic. They got Lonzo.
Rosen.
They got Caruso. They overhyped it. So I think that's kind of where this one is at. It's one of the worst off seasons in my opinion.
Yeah, this is an atrocious offseason because really, what did you see last year that led you to believe there's any hope of it just changing magically? Like, genuinely, it's just a waste of everybody's time, like including the players, including the fans of this team. I'm sorry, I hate to be harsh. Shout out to Justin, longtime viewer, supporter of the channel. But I feel bad for Bulls fans. I really, truly do. Like, this is a team that's afraid to make any moves. Like, they seem to be, in my opinion, afraid to make any moves. Like, the fact they haven't actually done anything with Zach LaVine or DeRozan at this point, they're literally going to wait until DeRozan's worth nothing, or LaVine just walks, or whatever ends up happening. Like, it's really crazy, man. I don't really get it. I think one of the most interesting and telling things about this team, and this is fitting because it's my Knicks were in this report that came out. But did you hear about that? The Knicks asked about LaVine, and the Bulls came back with literally just like an absurd, nobody would ever pay this price for him.
Yeah,
like that's the kind of stuff. Like, we have a Daryl Morey already. Like, we don't need another one, and you're not as good as he is at making those types of deals happen. So, what's his name? Arturas Karnisovas. Like, you gotta start doing stuff, man. Like, Vucevic for 3 for 60 ain't cutting the mustard at this point.
exactly. Let's move on to the next team. We, of course, have the Cavaliers, who we talked about yesterday on the channel, talking about them being under enormous pressure, according to Brian Windhorst. They signed Ty Jerome, Damian Jones, Caris LeVert, Niang, and Struess in a sign and trade. I think draft pick wise, I don't even think do they have a
They
draft
don't
pick?
have much. They don't have much. They gave most of it for Mitchell.
That's true. So Cavaliers. Did I go first in the last one?
Did, yeah.
Okay, you go first. Where are we putting the Cavs?
I know this is like one of the ones I don't want to go first. I think people think this is a good off season. I actually really don't like this off season. As a big supporter of this young Cavaliers team, I would put
Mm-hmm.
this in mid. I don't think I could say the worst.
Yeah.
Um, Personally, I'm much lower on this offseason than a lot of people. I don't really think they did enough to address what their actual problem was.
Mm-hmm.
And people would say, well, they went out and signed George Niang, they went out and signed Max Struess. I don't think those guys were good enough for the teams they were on that didn't make it last year. Like that, those guys aren't convincing me that they made this huge game, like league altering decision signing those two guys as your role players. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
Struess money was absurd. Thought it was really crazy how much they paid him, considering he, of all the Heat guys, was the one that did not show up the most in the playoffs. Um, yeah, I don't like it, man. I really think they needed to just go out. All they had to do was go get a competent, above average three. That's all they needed to do. And
Yeah.
they did everything in their power to not do the one thing they needed to do. I think that's poor business. One, because you didn't need to make all the moves you made, but also they're in the same problem they were last year. They literally don't have a three who's offensively competent, other than probably Struess, which he's not really a three. And even then, he's an awful defender. So now you've literally just found yourself in the reverse problem that you had with Okoro last year or Lamar Stevens last year. It's not even in my opinion, it's not much better. So, yeah, I'll say mid. I didn't like it, but they'll probably be better than they were last year. It's funny that both them and the Hawks are in the same spot.
Yeah. I think for the Cavaliers, the biggest thing that they need to really focus on is really, how do they address the offseason offensively? I think that's kind of been the report out there, is that how do they get better on offense? Because defensively, Pete, you talked about it, like they're studs. They play really well.
Yep.
The two bigs out there are doing their job. It's just offensively they have a little bit of struggle. And so, that may be down to Garland and Mitchell, and kind of how both guys need to have the ball in their hands. That's, I think Bickerstaff will come up with a great game plan for that. Now that they've kind of all been healthy and all together, they're going to have to utilize Mobley a lot more. So I'm loving the way that I like the way the Cavaliers are assembled and how they are put together. It's just offensively, can they click? And so I agree with you
Yeah.
there. I think mid off season, I think that I think the Levert signing. I know you're not a big fan of him. I like Levert. I think he's a pretty
That's
solid pickup.
funny. That's funny. I was going to come back to that and just reiterate how much I hated that contract.
I don't mind it. I do agree with you with the Struess though. I think when it comes to these guys, guys like Duncan Robinson, Struess, I want to see it consistently a little bit more before I pay the big bucks. But in this league, as soon as you see a flash in the pan, it's kind of the same thing that happened to Otto Porter Jr. Right? As soon as you see a,
Yep.
a, a guy that can shoot and he's shot really well in the playoffs, you sign him right away. And so I think that's kind of why the Cavaliers went the route that they did. Um, I think they no longer have Seti Osman, which I think is a huge loss for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with you. Mid off season.
Mid off season, and last thing I'll say is, I mean, honestly, I've heard more people give credit to George Niang this off season than literally in the entirety of his NBA career. So I don't know what that means. Um, Man, would I love to see the George Niang people think that the Cavaliers signed. I would love to see that.
All right, let's move on to this one. Could be a
Let's
tough
get it.
one. The Dallas Mavericks.
This
Uh,
one's weird, Bernie. This one's really weird.
But let's read off some of their stuff that they got. So of course they signed Seth Curry, 2-year deal. Dante Exum, he's back.
He's
Uh,
back.
Rashawn Holmes, finally leaving the Kings and going to be hopefully thriving. Uh, Kyrie Irving comes back on a 3-year deal. Dwight Powell comes back, and Grant Williams joins this team. And their draft pick, I believe that they drafted the kid out of, I think, Duke. If I'm not mistaken, Derek Lively the second. He officially goes there.
And they got what's his name? Oh man, he has the
Oh,
three word
Oliver
name.
Max Prosper.
Yes, yes.
Maximus
Omax.
Prosper.
Yeah, Omax. I actually really like Omax, so I thought that was a pretty good signing. You go ahead. You go first on this one, Bernie.
I think that this, to me, I kind of, the one thing I would say for this team is that I think it was kind of a mid off season for them. If I'm being
Yeah.
real, I think the issue with the Mavericks is, like, yes, you signed Kyrie Irving, yes, you have Luka Doncic, but who else do you have on this team? You have a lot of young players that are hungry, looking to make a roster spot on this team. My concern, and we can look at the Mavs roster here. There's a lot of young guys that they have, but who's going to be the guy that steps up for them besides, like I said, Luca or Kyrie? Like, yes, there's more room for them to attack, to drive, uh, but I think my biggest concern for them is who else do they have? Because the issue for them was if they played the style of basketball, they're going to need guys to shoot the rock. And, Grant Williams, pretty solid shooter, I would say. He had some memorable shots for the Celtics, so I can't really hate on him too much. But everyone else, like, Seth Curry signed with them. But where are these other shots and 3-point shots and anything for them? Bigs. Lively. He's not going to be ready to go in one
No.
year. He's
Yeah.
19. Like, he needs to develop his grown man body, and that's going to take 3 to 4 years. I just don't know where the Mavericks are going, and I personally will say that they are closely going to lose Luca if they don't shape up.
Yeah, the reason I say this is a weird one is because honestly, I think they did about as good as they could have done. It's still awful. Like, I still think it's terrible. They just literally put themselves in such a bad position to really upgrade their team that even doing the best they could is really not very good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love the Seth Curry signing. I honestly cannot fathom how that guy is under $5 million for 2 years. I don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the best shooters in the league. You're telling me Duncan Robinson, or let's use somebody we were just talking about. Max Strus is 3 for 60, and Seth Curry can't get more than 5. That's nuts. Great deal. Other than that, though, I hate it, man. I hated when they traded for Kyrie because really it makes very little sense for what they need. Um, but most importantly, this team is, I mean, they're going to be right there with like teams like Charlotte, like worst defensive teams in the league. This team is going to be an abomination on defense. They have literally no person you would call like a stopper, like a defensive, ace in some way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And part of the problem is they tried, right? They had that, agreed to a deal with Matisse Thybulle, obviously one of the better defenders in the league, somebody they
Yeah.
could, that would have been his calling card for the team. And apparently he wanted to go to Dallas too, but, the Trailblazers matched the offer.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change the fact that Dallas still doesn't have a defender. Like, that might not have been their fault they didn't get him, but even then, you didn't get him. So now you're in this position where you still have no defense, one of the most gifted offensive players we've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
no supporting cast that complements his play style. It's shockingly similar to the early tenure of LeBron in Cleveland. It's genuinely eerie how similar it is.
Yeah.
It's just constant underpaying the other guys, not necessarily overpaying Luca or LeBron. It's just not necessarily making smart choices in terms of the pieces that go around them. Um,
Exactly.
I agree with you, Bernie. They're in hot water as far as Luca staying with this team is concerned.
All right. Let's move on to the Denver Nuggets.
I'm gonna let you go first. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go for 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Okay. Justin Holiday, Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan. I think in the draft they did not pick up anything. Let me see if the Nuggets picked up anything. I don't think they did. Actually, they did. They picked up Julian Strothard. Pretty solid pickup, I would say. But if I had to be realistic with the Denver Nuggets, I think losing Bruce Brown is a huge loss for them. They have Contavious Caldwell Pope, which is great. I think the Denver Nuggets had a mid off season, and it's not due to the fault of, I would say, of their own, other than they just can't sign anybody with the salary cap that they have and the amount of money that Bruce Brown, garnered with the way that he played in the playoffs. And so I think that the Denver Nuggets clearly are going to miss him. They're missing that length now. I think it's going to be a huge offseason for them, but I think retaining Reggie Jackson could be solid for them as like just a regular season type of player. DeAndre Jordan, it is what it is. Justin Holiday, not bad, but excuse me, they're gonna have to rely a little bit on Strothard more in terms of like what they can do with him. And so I think that this wasn't necessarily the worst move. I also don't think it was the best move for the offseason for them. So I have the Denver Nuggets as a mid offseason just because the circumstance of they can't sign Bruce Brown because of the salary cap, and really they didn't bring anybody in besides like I said earlier, Holiday, Jackson, and DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Bernie. This is a hard one to judge. Similarly to Dallas, but also very different. It's like on the opposite side of the aisle from Dallas, but for similar reasons, right? Like they didn't have a lot they could do. In fact, they had very little they could do financially, and they're in Denver, small market, one of the hardest teams to even watch their games. It's not like they have a ton of money to throw around. It's almost like they're still championship contenders, obviously. I would still say they're right there in the top 3 or 4 teams coming into next season, if not, the 1 or 2. It wasn't a good offseason because they really didn't add anything of value. They only lost stuff that actually helped them win a championship. But that being said, is what it is. Mid, but I don't really blame them like I blame Dallas.
Yeah, let's move on to the Detroit Pistons. They signed Monty Morris. They got Joe Harris in a trade, and they got Isaiah Stewart on a 4-year extension. Draft pick wise, the Pistons selected your boy Ausar Thompson, and I think that was it in terms of draft picks for those guys. So, how do you rank their offseason? I know Ausar is going to be a great player for them. Hopefully, he gets the minutes. I worry. My only worry for them is just they're going to want to continue to go with Killian Hayes. But how do you rank their offseason?
I would say it's a good offseason as far as I'm concerned. I still think they have great pieces in terms of just like easy trades they can make coming up on the deadline to real contenders. Like there was like literally more talk about Bogdanovich last year than ever in the history of that man existing, just purely based on what I'm talking about. I like this offseason. I think they're kind of another team where last year was kind of almost like a mulligan year. Cade getting hurt was really tough, and they clearly were trying to be one of the worst teams so they could get in that Wemby range. Just want to see Jaden Ivey take the leap. I told you I was not too impressed with him in the summer league, this last summer league, and especially considering he's had an extra year in the league compared to a lot of the rookies he was going up against. I would have liked to see more, but I'm going to say good. I think they got a great coach, somebody they can have for a long time. Realistically, I think they have a ton of young talent. I just think they have weirdly too many guys in terms of like how many dudes on their team should be getting minutes for a quality team. They have too many. It's not like they have like superstars. They're in a weird spot, but I like it. I like it. You know me. I love my Ausar Thompson too, so I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I think I would be genuinely astounded if Killian Hayes is getting more minutes than Ausar Thompson. I would be shocked.
Yeah, don't be ready to get shocked because I think that's going to happen. Detroit Pistons, I think for me, like I'd probably put them more in the mid category.
It's
Just
fine. I
not
don't feel too strongly about it.
not because of the fact that they drafted a Soar or they picked up Isaiah Stewart on a 4-year extension. It's just like we talked about, the Pistons have been in this sort of mediocrity for the last couple years now. Like you said, as soon as they lost Cade Cunningham, they decided to go full rebuild. I think they have James Wiseman, if I'm not mistaken. It's about, and I think Marvin Bagley as well. Like it's about time that this team finally takes the leap to get better and to really play uh, to finally start contending the way that I would feel like the Orlando Magic have started moving up, the way that the Sacramento Kings have finally took that step and that leap up to get to that point where they're now, considering Western Conference final contenders now. Um, like that's where I want to see the Detroit Pistons take that leap, but I just feel like they've kind of been stuck in this mediocrity for so long. So that's why I would probably put them in there. I know that they have to use the draft because they are a small market team, um, but man, it is frustrating to continue to see the Pistons very low on the list year after year.
Yeah, I mean, even if I like it more than you, it's still, it's not really changing their destiny,
Yeah,
anything they did this offseason. I mean, there is a universe where they do have three young dudes. I would even argue four, like, legit guys they have for a long time. They have Jaden Ivey, whatever he ends up being, but then you got Cade and Asur, and then I think the guy that gets, like, so little talk on their team is Jaylen Duran. Like, he's
yeah,
awesome.
he's
Nobody
great.
ever talks about him. He's another year. I mean, he was already looking like young Bam Adebayo last year. I'd like to see what he looks like with another year under his belt too.
Exactly. Let's move on to the Golden State Warriors. This was a very big one. They obviously are going to bring back Draymond Green. They signed Corey Joseph. Chris Paul joins them via trade. Dario Saric joins them for another 1-year deal. Draft pick wise, they drafted the kid, if I'm not mistaken, uh,
Jen
Brandon
Pajemski.
Pojemski or whatever his last name is. I do apologize.
It's something like that. We'll have to learn how to say that one better.
Yeah, from Santa Clara. And they obviously got rid of Jordan Poole. I think that this offseason for them, I would probably rank it as mid. If I'm being real with you, Pete. Like just from the fact that now that all these guys are just a year older, I think Draymond Green will still be good. I don't think there's anything issues with that. To me, it's more so Clay Thompson. Uh, you know, how solid is he going to be this year? Because I think that he was kind of a detriment to them at times in those playoff games this last year.
Hmm.
So I could be convinced that it was a good off season for them, but at the same time, I think it was just very okay. It wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything great. I don't really see them as a championship team anymore, but I definitely think that they are very much a playoff team.
Yeah. Oh man, I kind of
Still
like
mid.
this off season. I kind of like this one for them because I think they did something I've been hoping they were going to do for a while, which is they
Trade Jordan
finally
Poole.
committed. What's up?
They finally traded Jordan Poole.
Oh, sorry. I thought my mic went out. I thought that's what was going on. They just finally committed to one timeline. They said, "All right, we're the old Warriors. We want Steph and we want Draymond and Clay. We're gonna keep them here and let them
Mm-hmm.
play out their days." It seems just getting off of Poole's contract is a win, as far as I'm concerned, like a big win. But even more importantly, like the chemistry of it all is going to be so much better. We talked about it before coming into last season. There were so many people that tried to dissuade everybody from thinking about the punch, right? Like, nah, it doesn't matter. This is the Warriors. It mattered. It clearly mattered. They clearly thought about it all season. They can't stop talking about it this off season. That tells you all you need to know about how big of a deal it was in their building, right?
Yeah.
It was the subtext to their whole season, and now they're past it. So whether or not the overall moves they made this offseason are great, I do think they addressed their biggest problem, which was catastrophic chemistry compared to what their bread and butter has been throughout this dynasty of this Warriors team. So I'd say good, but I can't really disagree with you that like fundamentally it's a mid-off season. It's just more how you feel about
The
the
Warriors.
yeah, the more not even just the Warriors, but the more like speculative side of basketball, right? It's
Yeah.
not even I'm not even saying X's and O's in terms of quality players, it's better. It's just the intrinsic value of having people who like each other playing together.
Yeah.
They got a big bonus in that this year.
Yeah.
This off season.
I'll move them up to good off season. You convinced me a little bit. Uh,
Hey,
you
I'll
had a way
take it.
with words there.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Houston
See where I can get it.
Rockets. Dylan Brooks, Jeff Green, Aaron Holiday, Jock Landale, Fred Van Vliet, and of course they drafted uh Amen Thompson, your guy,
My boy.
your twin.
Man.
That's your twin.
Twin. Yeah, I'm the third. I'm the third. I'm the triplet.
You're the triplet
Um
of the Thompson twins.
do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah, you go first on this one.
I mean, it obviously can't be called a championship offseason, but I really like their offseason. I would say it's good. There's things I would criticize heavily about it though. Right? And one of the biggest things is actually the opposite of what I just said with the Warriors. I feel like this Houston Rockets team actually understands their timeline less than they did last year. You know, like it went in a weird way where you have a coach who clearly wants to win, which is already a huge boost to their offseason. They got the best available coach as far as I'm concerned. From everything we've seen from eBay, he was the best guy that anybody could have signed as their head coach. They got him. Um, they also have finally committed to the like let's not just be terrible and keep tanking every year, which is also a big win as far as I'm concerned. The problem is now you have literally half of a team that's veterans and half of a team that's incredibly raw, not ready to compete, right? So what are they actually looking to do? I would like to see them move some of their young guys, some of the guys
Mm-hmm.
that like have value, but they just really there's too much overlap on this team. Like obviously the one I'm talking about is Jaylen Green. Just think he has a lot of value. Go get it while it's still there. For all you know, after this season, you have Fred Van Vliet, you have Amen Thompson, two guys that are going to have the ball in their hands a lot. You do need to worry about like what are people going to see from Jaylen Green coming up that is
Right.
going to keep them interested. So yeah, I like this offseason quite a bit, but I do think there's a lot of question marks. This is almost like I'm going to give you a weird comparison. This is like Lost. Do you remember that TV show? It's
Yeah.
like I really like Lost, but I feel like I come out of every episode with more questions than I have answers. I feel
Mm-hmm.
the same. Like, I like what Houston's doing. I just don't really know where it's going. So,
Yeah.
yeah, good.
Yeah, I would say good as well. I think the only disagreement I have with you is that I think that these older guys that they signed, I think they're pretty solid, and I think it'll help these young guys grow and mature. I think the issue with that though is that one guy's gonna have to be the sacrificial lamb, if you will, and I just
Yeah.
think that's gonna be Kevin Porter Jr. And he's gonna probably be traded. I'm not sure where. I just feel like that's kind of the route that things are going. I just feel like Ma is a no nonsense coach. Doesn't want anybody that. I would say in terms of because obviously he um yeah I think that the big thing for them is going to be they're going to have to get rid of one of the young guys, no nonsense coach. I think it's going to be Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah, I didn't even say him. I honestly think they should get rid of him regardless. I just don't even think he has a place on the team, really,
Yeah.
because he's not a point guard, but he's been playing point guard for like 3 straight seasons. He's not necessarily the greatest point guard ever. He's a solid player. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, this is my final thing with Houston, Bernie. I have to ask because I feel like we've talked to death about the much later stages of this question with the 76ers this offseason. Has the damage already been done with some of these young guys? Were they in such an atrocious organization with such poor, coaching and such poor team management for the last few years that I say this with a heavy heart because I'm not saying I would wish this upon anybody, but are they damaged goods? You know, are these guys who have lost whatever it is that, you know, might lead them to be the best version of a player they could be? And I would
Mhm.
say, like, the 76ers process we've talked about, like I said, like, they really helped themselves out by wasting those years the way they did and having bad coaches and just saying, it's okay to lose, you know? Have to wonder because there's a lot of guys on this team that have been privy to that
Yeah.
mentality now for a few years. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. I would say one thing too. I'm even higher on Jabari Smith Jr. than I was last year coming into the draft. I
Yeah.
would say he's one of my guys. Like, people really need to keep an eye on him this year
Mhm.
because his skill set with Ime's coaching is very, 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 very in line with what Ime likes about a player. You know,
Exactly.
I think we're going to see a huge jump in him as a player this season. I'm really looking forward to that in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah. Let's quickly move through some of these teams just because I know that time is
Mm-hmm.
limited. Um,
Let's go.
Phoenix Suns. Where are we putting these guys? Championship offseason?
I think it's a terrible offseason, but yeah, they're certainly contenders. I just don't like it. I don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
The Beal stuff is just terrible. But yeah,
Yeah. I think I agree in a sense, but also it's a championship offseason. They got Beal. They got a lot of vet minimum guys that they don't have to pay that much, and they convinced him
yep.
to sign it, which is crazy. But hey,
Eric Gordon, yeah.
they're gonna be making some big cash. So championship offseason for them. Let us go with the uh, Memphis Grizzlies. You know, the kind of the big signing there was Marcus Smart. We know John Morant's not going to be there. Where do you have the Grizzlies in this championship, or I would say in this window?
Oh man, oh boy. You know what? I would say I'm gonna just go straight mid. Go straight mid because I don't really feel too strongly that they made bad choices, but I also don't really like the choices they made either. I like Marcus Smart a lot for this team. I like the mentality he's going to bring. I like the fact that he is definitely not going to just be like go with the flow and let people act like clowns. He's not going to be that guy, and I think they need that in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just letting Dylan Brooks like just leave the way they did, and like they clearly could have got something for him if they didn't play it the way they did in terms of just saying you're never coming back here. You know,
Yeah.
like he was worth more than that, and they should have thought about it because whether or not you like the guy is a business. Same way that Jaylen Brown's getting supermaxes, you need to think about getting little bits here and there. But yeah, I'll say mid. I didn't like getting rid of Jones the way they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, they just got Christopher Bain, brought in Derrick Rose, and they have Isaiah Todd. So that's kind of what their offseason's looking like.
Ooh.
Uh, so yeah, I would probably say, yeah, I'd probably go mid as well. Let's go Trailblazers. Scoot Henderson, probably the biggest pickup. Damian Lillard, uncertainty there. Uh, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything that they have as well. They got Jeremy Grant returning on a 5-year deal, and they got Matisse Thybulle as well. Uh, I'm gonna have to go with if I had to just kind of because we're rapid firing some of these guys. Uh, I would probably say that this was a mid off season just because they the timeline that they're going to be working on, like you said, it changes now that Lillard's going to be traded. I think that it's the inevitable, and so they really planned, and really the roster that they have is really suited for a guy like Damian Lillard and not, these young guys who are trying to grow into it, especially with Jeremy Grant signing that 5-year deal. Like, it's a good deal, but at the same time, it doesn't
A
really
lot of
fit
money.
the timeline for what they want to do.
Yeah, I'd say good for this one personally, just because I like the fact that
Okay.
they're standing firm with their decision making. They're not don't need to litigate the Damian Lillard stuff, right? But
Yeah.
they're not just going to let him walk and just take pennies for him, which is
Hmm.
already more than you could say for certain managers and certain franchises, right?
Right.
Also, they chose the guy that's going to put them in the best position to lead their new team. You know, Scoot
Hmm.
Henderson and put Shaden Sharp another year into his experience in
Right.
the NBA. I like this team quite a bit in terms of just one of the younger teams, but a lot of it obviously hinges on what's going to happen with Dame. Just respect the fact that they're playing it a little closer to somebody like a Maury, right? In terms of holding firm and not just getting pushed around by bigger teams. I think
Yeah.
that's an important thing to note with these small market franchises.
Yeah, let's go Knicks. Where are we putting the Knicks?
Oh
Where are they
boy.
going?
Oh
This
boy.
championship off season?
This is about as mid of an off season as you can get right
Yeah.
here. I like the DiVincenzo signing quite a bit. I
Mhm.
don't think he was I honestly think it was really like a fair contract in comparison to like what you saw for Struess. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I would rather pay DiVincenzo 50 than Struess 60. That's just not
Mhm.
even a question to me. Um, Getting rid of Toppin, Obi Toppin, the way they did just for like 2 seconds, that was honestly pathetic. Um, should have done anything to just not waste that guy. He's going to end up going to Indiana and just be better than he ever was for us, and
Mhm.
that's a bummer, but that is what it is to be a Knicks fan sometimes. I think the biggest thing, and this is my final nail in the mid coffin, is the fact that Randall is still on the team. It's just how much do we need to see this dude
Yeah.
completely flame out in the playoffs to know he is not the guy that's going to take us to the promised land?
Mhm.
And I think they probably know that, but if they know that, they need to do something about it rather than just sitting and, biding their time because eventually you've wasted too much time and now nothing is available. So, yeah, it's mid.
All right, let's move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. For them, they signed Nikhil Alexander Walker, Troy Brown's there, Anthony Edwards agrees to a 5-year extension. Milton agrees to a 2-year deal. They obviously had that big trade from last year. I think it's a quiet year, and it's more so that it's mid for me in terms of like the players that they picked up are solid pieces. They obviously re-signed Anthony Edwards, which is a great thing. For
Mhm.
me, the biggest thing for this team is going to be they need to show up this year because last year was unacceptable in my opinion for the way that they finished the season. They should have won that game against the Lakers. There was no excuses there. They kind of choked up at the moment that they needed to the most. Credit to the Lakers for winning that game, but still, I think the Timberwolves choked that game away. And so, for me personally, I have the Timberwolves as a mid off season.
Yeah, this is similar to Dallas, similar to Denver. They didn't have a lot of anything
Moves
to
to
work
make, yeah,
with, really. There
yeah.
was like very, very, very little they could do. But that being said, um, yeah, I'm gonna have to go mid. I think the one thing for this team, just about more than any other team, maybe Portland is in the same spot actually. Their grade could go way up as far as I'm concerned if they trade Carl Anthony Towns. It could go way up because I like Nas Reed quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and people would question that contract, but it was solid for how good he is. One of the
Yeah.
better six men in the entire league. But imagine you get a ton of value for Carl Anthony Towns. Nas Reed just moves straight up, right? I like the spot they're in. It's just it's not didn't change much. So yeah, mid with you.
All right, let's go Miami Heat. Where are you putting the Heat?
Miami Heat. I would say considering again they didn't have a ton to work with. I like their off season. I would say good. I don't know if I would classify that as a championship off season, but again, this is one that could very quickly go to championship as soon as they
They
get
get
Damian
Lillard.
Lillard, right?
Yeah.
Like that. That's the big thing. And the fact that they've positioned themselves, I honestly, you know what? I'm gonna say championship off season
Wow.
just for the mere fact that they're still, by all accounts, the clear favorite to land Damian Lillard. Um, I would still put them there because whether or not they get him right now before the season, like they did put themselves in the best spot for him to want to go there. Kept
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Butler. He didn't pay $60 million to Max Struess. I like their offseason quite a bit.
Yeah. Let's move to the Oklahoma City Thunder. To me personally, I thought that they had a good offseason. I don't know if it can be championship yet, just because clearly these guys are very young. But a healthy Chet Holmgren who dominated the summer league, I would say, in a way that I needed to in order to kind of be confident in his ability for this coming season. Josh Giddey obviously coming off a great year. Shea Gilgis obviously coming off a tremendous year. Um, you have Jalen Williams playing really well, the kid from Santa Clara. Uh, love him. I just think that this team's going to be really good this year. So I got the Oklahoma City Thunder as a good offseason. And I expect them to win a lot more games and could potentially be in a playing game, but we'll see how the cookies crumble there.
I love their offseason. I would say good, personally. Just honestly, some of the little moves they do every year, like getting Davis Bertans, they took
Mm-hmm.
that contract, got some picks back, and used those picks to get Victor Oladipo, little stuff like
Yeah,
that. That's just great business. But then they got Jason Wallace, and you know how
yeah,
I feel about him. He's going to
yep.
be a stud for
He's
a
gonna
long
be
time.
great.
Next
Toronto
Drew Holiday.
Raptors. Where are they going?
Ooh, Toronto Raptors. Oh boy. I'm gonna say this might be like the worst one, Bernie. This
Jaden
might be the worst.
McDaniels, Jakob
This might
Poeltl,
be
and
the
Dennis
worst off
Schroeder.
season. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it's pretty bad. It's not necessarily the greatest, just because they keep their young guys, but they're in this weird timeline, like you talk about. Like I this offseason, I think who did they draft this year? They drafted the Grady
Drafted
Dick.
Grady Dick. Yep,
Grady Dick, who again I like Grady
Hamburglar.
Dick, but I just don't know if he's in the right situation for them. I don't know. He's definitely not a guy that's going to carry the franchise.
No,
Um,
no, 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 no.
and so yeah, I mean I got to put them in the worst off season. Depending on what they do with Siakam and OG, it's going to be a full rebuild in Toronto.
Yeah, that's a terrible off season. They really lost only and gained very little.
Yeah.
Poor
All right, let's move on to the Indiana Pacers. Where do you have them?
Indiana Pacers. I think they had a great off season. Actually. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think you could classify it as a
Championship.
championship. I still think they're pretty far away from that.
Yeah.
I do like what they did. I like the Knicks' loss is their gain. I think Obi Toppin is going to be super solid for them. He's the exact type of guy who's going to thrive next to somebody like Halliburton.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be catching insane lobs from Halliburton all season. It's going to sting every time I see it. Then they went in and got guys like Bruce Brown,
That
right?
was a
Like
huge pickup.
as a huge pickup, and they did it in such a smart way. They give him an absurd amount of money for Bruce Brown. That being said, it was money that was literally going to go nowhere else. They had nothing else to do with it. So give it to a solid guy who's going to come into your team and eat a lot of minutes at a lot of different spots.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really really liked it. The only thing I would say is they ended up with Jarace Walker, right, or Jarris
Yeah.
Walker.
Yep.
He at the spot they took him, he was one of my guys that I was not particularly high on in that
Mm-hmm.
later lottery, mid late lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good offseason. I mean, he still has a ton of upside, and I could be totally wrong about him. So
Yeah, I think the fact that they kept Halliburton on a 5-year extension clearly has them winning that NBA offseason. So I agree with
that's a
you.
good one.
Good offseason. Pelicans. This is kind of one of those teams
Pellies.
that didn't do too much. They get Herb Jones back. EJ Liddell agrees to a 3-year deal. Cody Zeller agrees to a 1-year deal. And the Pelicans draft our Jordan Hawkins,
I really
champion,
like. Yeah, I
champion
really
forward.
like Jordan
So
Hawkins. He's going to be very, very good for a long time. Whether it's probably just role playing stuff, but
yeah,
even then, he'll be a great role player in this iteration of the NBA. I don't know how to feel about them, Bernie. I honestly am going to let you go first, just because I really think they should have done something with Zion. But what do you think?
they should
Where'd
have
you
done
put him
something
at?
with any of their roster. I have to put it in mid. I just think that this is a team that's going to run it back one more time. But my worry for them running it back one more time is this team ready to take that next step? Because we thought they were going to take the next step last year. They didn't do it because Zion got hurt once again. Like that's
Mhm.
the label on Zion right now. And so if you have a label on a superstar player like Zion, it really messes up with the team's flow and chemistry. And they cannot miss the playoffs. They just can't. They have to be contenders.
Yeah, I'll say mid with you. I would lean towards I really didn't like it because, like you, I agree. Like they really didn't do enough of anything for how bad it was at times last season.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, it's explainable. You don't want to force the Zion trade and then look back and say like, "Dang, we should have just stuck that out for another year and waited." Um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about them. I would say mid. I'm with you.
All right, let's go with the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks, they just re-signed Middleton,
Lopez.
Lopez. Both Lopez brothers are there. AJ Green agrees to a deal. Jay Crowder, Malik Beasley, and in the draft, they selected, if I'm not mistaken, they may have not had a draft pick this time around, but
I don't think they did. I don't think they
yeah,
had a pick.
yeah. Where are we ranking this team?
This one, oh man, this one's kind of tough too. I would say mid, but this one is one of those ones where it should probably be top of mid because they didn't have a lot they could do, similar to some other teams we've talked about. Not a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money, but also I would argue of all the teams that would question whether they should run it back because things didn't fall the way they should have last season. It's really them. Like they're
Yeah,
the number one team. They There's no way. I'm sorry. I just won't believe this. If Giannis didn't hurt his back, they would have beat the Heat. I really feel strongly about that. Um, Still happened the way it happened, so there's no taking back history. But I understand running it back with this team. I just am not too sure about Middleton. I think that's really my biggest question. Long term, does he really look like a guy who's going to keep himself? I'm not saying like by lack of choice. I'm just saying health wise, everything. Is he a guy that's going to age gracefully in the NBA and still be
yeah.
super viable as like a number 2, 3 option for
Mm-hmm.
Giannis? I'm not sure about that, but I do like the fact that they went out and got a new coach finally. Also, thoughts and prayers for their coach. Had an awful thing happen to him this week too. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, not we don't need to get into that. Just shouts out. Hopefully he's doing okay. But yeah, man, I would say it's okay, but it couldn't have done much.
Yeah.
It,
Let's go with the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz drafted Keontae George uh,
and
and Taylor
Hendricks.
Hendricks at number 9. And their offseason moves goes as followed. They got Jordan Clarkson to a 3-year extension, John Collins, and Amen Yutrasev. You're 7.
You're at
Yurtseven.
7, yeah, the guy from
Yeah, you're at 7.
Miami.
Yeah. Where are we going with this team?
Hmm. Hmm. I I think they had a good off season. I again a team that like what are they really gonna do that would shoot them up into championship? There's almost
Mm-hmm.
nothing they could have done that would have been that strong. But
Yeah.
I like what they did with their young guys. Getting Keontae George was super high upside where they
Yeah.
where they ended up landing him, and obviously he was insanely good in the summer league. Then even Taylor Hendricks, like Taylor Hendricks looks really solid. I think my biggest question for them is why'd they get John Collins? You
Yeah.
know, why did you get John Collins to then take Taylor Hendricks at number
Yeah.
9? Doesn't make
Maybe it's a favor or something. Quinn
Yeah,
Snyder.
yeah. No, that's actually a good point. It could have been a favor. It also could have been like one of those things. Like, and really, what it is most likely similar to what Presti does with OKC, like the
Yeah.
Bertans contract I mentioned, where it's we'll take on your bad contract, but we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get something from it. We're gonna get
Yeah.
something out of this because maybe they could too. Who knows? John Collins, maybe he's better this year, and they finally trade him for actual value, like the Hawks
Yeah.
couldn't do.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Go good off season. 76ers. We obviously had the Embiid news. But in terms of moves, Patrick Beverly, 1-year deal. Mo Bamba, Montrez returns. Paul Reed got got tricked into signing Paul Reed in terms of all that money that they're gonna pay him.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean Paul Reed is good. That was a lot of
yeah,
money though.
and I think draft pick wise they got none. The trade away to the I believe the uh, Nets. So yeah,
I'll let you go first on this one, Bertie. What do you think?
I think it's a mid off season again. Like not much you can do. James Harden doesn't want to be there anymore. You also have Joel Embiid, who is probably more than likely going to head out the door as well. The process is officially going to be at a halt here, and so because it's going to be at a halt, I just think that for what they have and what they need, it's not a very good off season. But it's not the worst off season. But they are on the bottom tier of the of the mid off season because I just think they're going to take a step down because I just don't see anybody trading for James Harden if I'm keeping it real. Maybe there might be the Clippers.
Definitely,
Maybe the
maybe,
Clippers, but
yeah.
it's going to be hard and not the
They're,
same value.
we can agree on this. They're certainly not getting an all-star back. That
Yeah.
is a question. That is not even a question. I honestly think this was a terrible offseason, but I would put them in mid with you just because similar to a couple other teams where I talked about like the intrinsic stuff, like not like the Warriors, right? I think this is almost a reverse Warriors. The Warriors did a lot
Yeah.
of great stuff for their chemistry and addressed some of their biggest concerns in terms of what's going on in the locker room and
Mm-hmm.
everything as far as that's concerned. Because really, the 76ers offseason started with a great thing. Getting rid of Doc and getting a better coach, Nick Nurse. That's a huge win as far as I'm concerned. The problem is that then they really did nothing to fix the team that wasn't good enough the last few years. And it's all spiraled out of control from
Yeah.
a chemistry wise, position for them. So yeah, let's just go mid. That's it. Right now, this is still a wait and see because let's say tomorrow Joel Embiid says I need to get out of here. It's probably the worst off season of anybody.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Wizards. The Wizards, I believe,
Is Lee's.
they got Koulibaly as their kind of big draft
Yeah.
pickup. Wizards, they got Tyus Jones, Danilo Gallinari, and Mike Muscala, along with Kyle Kuzma returning on a deal. They got Jordan Poole, Patrick Baldwin Jr., and Ryan Collins. And they also got Landry Shamet. How are we feeling about this team?
I actually think this was a good off season. There's things about it I don't like. Generally speaking, I they just their biggest problem is they waited way too long. Like
Yeah.
they did a lot of good things, just waited too long to do those good things. So the good things kind of were dampened by how long it took to get there. I think Kuzma the deal is okay. It's just I wouldn't want him on that team when you could have signed and traded him or traded him last season for a bunch of value. That
Yeah.
was the move. Going and getting guys like Poole, I think that is genius. Even though I don't like Poole, who knows what he's going to be? We'll get him out of a bad chemistry spot and value in return for not sending much. I like that kind of stuff. Same with Tyus Jones, just adding solid guys while getting rid of people don't fit in long term. I like that. I'd say good, but it's probably one of the worst goods that are there.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, for all the moves that you made and all the things that they brought in, did they improve themselves? Maybe, but at the same time, I don't think. Actually, I don't even think they improved themselves. Koulibaly is still a work in progress. They're gonna have to really work on him, and he's a long term project. In terms of
I
just
love
like
that dude.
draft picks wise or like pickup wise, I would say that they're more mid to me. But I could be convinced that they are good off season, but I would probably put them in mid as well.
I would just say for me, the biggest thing that puts them in good is getting off of Beal's contract. Like honestly, the fact that they got out of that, then he had no trade clause. Like that's crazy. It's absurd, didn't
Yeah.
he?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's hard to remember if it was a nightmare I had that they were giving $60 million no trade clause contracts to Bradley Beal. But just getting off of that, getting even anything, I know people like flame them for just a bunch of second round picks. Honestly, better than the spot they were in just to get off that deal. They would have just been floundering for another 10 years.
Yeah. And then we also have Drunk. Welcome in. He said,
In
how did
Toronto?
he have a championship off season? They lost Gabe Vincent and really signed nobody unless I'm tripping. And the Warriors with the mid off season.
Well, things we talked about with the Heat. I mean, Bernie, I think you disagreed with me slightly. You
Yeah.
didn't say they were a championship offseason. I think the fact that you're in the finals and positioned yourself to get literally a top 10 player in the league who only wants to go to your team of all teams, and there's no way they were paying Gabe Vincent 3 for 30. It was never happening. They were never paying whatever they paid Strus for 60. It wasn't happening. Those are terrible deals in terms of where they're at right now. It's just not good business for them. So there's no way they got worse than they did last season. That's just where I'm coming from. They didn't get worse. They were in the finals. and they have the potential to go get one of the best guys in the league. So yeah, that's why they're a championship contender as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I have them in good, just because those guys that they got rid of, it was fine for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't afford it. But they're gonna potentially bring in Damian Lillard, so that's kind of why they're there. Let's go Clippers. L.A. Clippers. I don't think they had. They drafted Kobe Brown. In terms of free agent pickup wise, they are.
They got Russell Westbrook.
They got Westbrook coming back.
Kept
They
him.
got Mason Plumlee, and they got Kenyon Martin Jr. joining their squad.
This is really truly the definition of mid. They really did nothing of note, negative or positive. It's just completely. Let's just see what happens next season. Which really, I guess you could say this is probably one of the few teams I think you could say they should not have done that. I think you know what you're getting, but I guess whatever floats Steve Ballmer's boat. But yeah, mid.
Yeah, let's go Orlando Magic. I thought that this was a good offseason. Whoops, not championship. They're not ready for that yet. Maybe in a couple years. I think the big thing for them is that they got the guys they needed to in the draft. You know how I feel about Anthony Black. I think Jet Howard's actually a good pickup. I know a lot of people didn't like that one, but I think he's a solid guy. Joe Ingles, you add some veteran leadership there. You got Wagner returning on a 2-year deal. I think that this team is looking on the up and up, and so that's why I have this as a good offseason for them. They address their point guard need, hopefully, with Anthony Black, and you can have some of these other guys like Suggs and Cole Anthony as kind of some bench guys that can come in and do the things that they need to do.
I would say mid for this one.
Wow.
I don't feel so strongly that I would tell you to take them out of good, but I didn't like their offseason. I still need to make clear, I like the spot they're in as a franchise. Like I like a lot of their young guys. Obviously, I'm huge on Powell. I think he's going to be a stud for 15 years from now. Same with Franz Wagner. He's going to be insane for a long time too. I think my biggest thing with them is like, why would you, if you're going to spend your cap, why Joe Ingles? Why Mo Wagner? I'm sorry. Those dudes aren't doing much for you. They're really not. And if anything, you should just be focusing on your young guys. Like Joe Ingles is not bringing a lot to this team. And I like the Anthony Black pick. You have convinced me. I've turned more towards Anthony Black than I was pre-draft. I think he's probably going to be a stud. I still feel pretty strongly that the Jet Howard pick was pretty terrible. Like they just didn't need to make that pick. It was just a huge reach for a guy that just a position that like they didn't need it. I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. I would rather have packaged those picks and moved up and got a better guy, to be straight up with you. But that being said, wasn't bad either. So mid for me, but I'll say good. I'll go with your good.
All right. Let's go Spurs. Clearly, the big elephant in the room with that. Victor Wembanyama comes to their team. I know he kind of had a mixed review for a lot of people on his NBA Summer League. Reggie Bullock, they signed. Julian Champagne. Trey Jones. Sandro, I can't even pronounce this dude's name. They got in Cedi Osman.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even looking at it. I just made up letters.
Lamar Stevens and Cameron Payne. How are we feeling about this one?
I mean, I think it has to be a good offseason, right?
I agree, yeah.
I think it has to be. You got your guy. You got a guy. Whether or not Wemby is the guy everybody says he is, the guy we've said he is, it doesn't even matter right now. Ranking this offseason, it's good because you got the best available guy this offseason, Wembanyama. I do think they could have done more in free agency, gotten a couple guys that might have, eased the transition into the league for Wemby a little bit. I really would have liked them to get like a veteran point guard. Somebody who's like really savvy with the ball and can help Wemby as far as bringing the ball up the court is concerned. But yeah, it's got to be good. It's got to be good. And I still like their guys that they got from the last couple drafts. Like I'm still really high on Sohan. I think he's going to be a stud, especially next to Wemby.
Yeah.
that man is going to be a rebounding demon. Like he is going to be crazy on the boards.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go Sacramento Kings. Draft wise, I don't think that they drafted anybody. Oh no, they did. No, they didn't.
You talking about?
Sacramento Kings. I don't think that they drafted anybody.
Um, I
They
can't remember
drafted
if
him,
they
but they
did it.
traded to the Mavericks.
Oh yeah, they got Omax, the
Yeah,
24th pick, right? Because
but
that's how they got rid of Sean Holmes.
yes, but they did get Chris Duarte. They got Alex Len. They got Trey Lyles, Nerlens Noel, Sabonis on a contract extension, and of course Vezanov.
Yeah, Veznov. That one's solid,
Veznov.
obviously.
Sasha Veznov. You know,
Zankov. I always forget
Zenkov.
that K. Yeah, he's got a K in there. I always forget the K's there. Zankov.
I
Yeah, what do you think about this one, Bernie?
I think it's a. I don't want to be a stan, but I think that this was a championship offseason for them.
Wow. Wow, that's strong. You hear it though.
I,
Maybe you'll convince me.
I just think that the moves that they made, they clearly this team is just so slowly starting to remind me of that 2002 Kings team, and that might be just a lazy comparison. Um, but when you got the guys that you got Fox, you got Murray, who's emerging as a really good player. Uh, Chris Duarte, I think, is a solid role player for them that they got. Some Sabonis obviously needs to work on some other post moves, but you sign a guy that you've had great success with, and then Vezkanov or Vez Vez
Zankov. Yeah, you're right
Zankov.
there. We'll get it. It's
Yeah,
new.
I like him. EuroLeague MVP. I think that this was a great offseason for them.
I'm a little less high on it. I think it's closer to good for me. I would even go so far as to say like low good, but it's still good. Like they did the things they needed to do. Like you said, adding Duarte, Vazenkov, those guys are solid. We'll see what Vazenkov is. I guess I should say EuroLeague MVP. But like Duarte, the fact that they got him for like a couple, like what was it, a couple second rounders, I think is
Yeah.
what they had to give for him. I mean, that type of shooting, like off the bench with what the shooting they already have,
Mm,
is going to be really silly. Like this might
yeah.
be like the most 3-point makes by a team ever. Like just based on their roster, like they're going to take so many. Um, just think this is my one thing that takes them away from good or championship for me, Bernie. Feels like there was so much riding on them going to get like a Draymond or Kuzma or those guys. Like there was so much talk about them wanting those guys and clearing room for them. Not end up with anything in terms of any free agents or vets that improve the spot they're looking to improve. That does stink. They weren't going to pay as much to Draymond as the Warriors did. That was a long shot no matter what. But Kuzma could have really helped. He really
Yeah.
could have helped them in a lot of ways. So I think in some ways you needed a little bit more, but it's solid for sure.
All right. And last but not least, the LA Lakers.
Lakers.
Where you
You
at,
go,
my
Bernie.
Pete?
You go. I want to hear you first.
Um,
I hear you cook on this one.
I might be cooking here, but let's see here. Lakers, they got Hood Shafino. I think that's a great pickup for them.
Yep.
Really like his game. I think he's going to do really some solid things. Max Christie showed out in the summer league. That I think he was either on the first team or the second team for all summer league.
Yep.
They got Rui Hachimura back on a 3-year deal, which is great. Jackson Hayes, Torian Prince, Austin Reeves back, Cam Reddish, who again I still think that there's some faith in them. Uh, D'Angelo Russell, Gabe Vincent. I mean, this to me, this has to be a championship offseason for them. The fact that they've kind of now solidified the role players that they have. I hope that this is finally going to be the year where LeBron James can take it a little bit easier in terms of not having to play as many minutes, as much game, because that to me, the Lakers are so much better when these role players and the guys that they have coming off the bench for them, guys like Rui
Mm.
Hachimura, guys like D'Angelo Russell, my stance on him. But Cam Reddish, Austin Reeves, that's a huge pickup for them. Gabe Vincent, like I feel like they
That's
did
awesome
the best
concept.
job that they could.
This is genuinely um this is genuinely the best possible version of an off season they could have asked for. You know, like in a lot of ways, they were in the same spot as teams like Dallas and Denver. Like they don't have a lot of room to work with. They don't have you know, an exorbitant amount of money to spend
Right.
or enticements to bring other people in. They still managed to literally address almost every single problem they had, and they did it in one big way. I think like the thing they lucked out the most was their contracts for Reeves and Hachimura. You know, there was so much talk about what those dudes were going to make. There was so much talk. Honestly, I was shocked that Reeves didn't get a bigger offer from somebody, you know, like in his restricted free agency. I was shocked that he didn't get it. But to bring him back in the, you know, the level of improvement he's shown over the last couple years, yeah, man, that those are stellar deals, and having the money to go get Gabe Vincent and all these other guys,
Mm-hmm.
it's all around. It's an A+ off season. It's
Yeah.
honestly, I hate to give Palinka the credit. He's genuinely been on a heater
He's
since
been a
the trade
masterclass.
deadline. It,
It's
it,
Palinka
I
masterclass right now.
honestly think ever since we talked about how unbelievable it was that that one ranking gave him the like, you know, that didn't somebody say he had like one of the best off seasons last year?
Yeah.
We were just astounded by it. And I flamed him on this stream, and he's been great ever since. So maybe I like reverse jinx, bro. But Palinka he's been killing the game for a while now. So
Yeah.
credit to the Lakers putting LeBron in the best possible position to
Mm-hmm.
hopefully go win another championship.
Yeah. I was thinking that. Let's see here. Drunk, let's read your comments and then we have to head out of here. Lakers had a championship offseason. I hate the Lakers. I've never seen bro's face who be talking, so my mind AI generated him a face. He looks like JJ Redick. So Pete, you're JJ Redick.
Did you show me?
No, he says that
Oh,
he's
he
never
said. Oh,
seen.
he's just saying I look. Honestly, I'll
He's
take
thinking
that.
he's
JJ,
thinking that you look like JJ Redick. He's got
I'm long haired JJ. I'll take it.
look here,
Why not?
JJ. Drunk. I was shocked with the reads about not getting a bigger offer too. I think they feel he's a LeBron creation.
I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, there's been, you know, definitely a handful of guys that LeBron helped get some clout in the league, and then they
Mm-hmm.
went and were not good somewhere else. But
Yeah.
I don't think Reeves is like a Tristan Thompson. I just think that's crazy to think, you know,
Yeah.
like why I told you before in the offseason, like before free agency, like the fact that the Spurs didn't try and get Reeves, like that makes no sense to me. That makes no sense. If anything, I should downgrade them just for that. He was
Yeah.
perfect for them.
Yeah. And that's going to do it here for this part and really the whole stream. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors, and of course, our basketball opinions as we talked about who had the greatest offseason. We do apologize that it was not longer. I just have to open up the gym for open gym later tonight, so I have to get ready for that. So I do apologize that I can't stay on any longer. And Pete also has to go as well, so I don't want to hold him up any longer than he needs to because he's got his own stuff to do. So, Pete, I do appreciate you hopping on and tuning in and talking some basketball. It's been fun, man.
Dude, I agree. I appreciate you having me on as always. Thank you everybody that stopped by, drunk, everybody, man. I really appreciate all the comments, you know, feedback, talking to us about these guys. That's all we want to do here is just have good conversations,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy basketball, and, you know, just talk about it a little bit more than, you know, maybe some other places do where it's, you know, all hot takes and stuff.
Exactly. But with that being said, thank you once again for joining us here on The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. We're looking forward to seeing you guys in a future live stream. We'll let you know when it's live. But if you guys want to rewatch this live stream, see where we rank these guys. Do you agree with our rankings for these NBA teams? Let us know in the comment section down below. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Pete, thank you once again for joining, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode of The Charge. Anyway, guys, we'll catch you later.